Hello there, welcome back to this channel. I know you want to learn more about criminology. If you are looking for more videos about criminology and other related topics, this channel is right for your educational needs. In today's video, the biological theories of crime causation will be presented. Before we start, don't forget to like, give your feedback in the comment box below and subscribe to be updated for more videos in this channel. Accordingly, criminals differ from non-criminals by a number of biological and psychological characteristics. More modern theories are based on the interplay of biological and social factors that cause crime, biosocial theories. As I presented in the previous video about theories of crime causation, the theories that covers the explanation to causes of crimes are categorized in three main approaches, namely 1. The biological theories, 2. The sociological theories, and 3. The psychological theories. Biological explanations of crime assume that some people are born criminals, and are physiologically distinct from non-criminals. The most famous proponent of this approach is Cesare Lombroso, the father of modern criminology. Biological theories. Biological theories within the field of criminology attempt to explain behaviors contrary to societal expectations through examination of individual characteristics. These theories are categorized within a paradigm called positivism, also known as determinism, which asserts that behaviors, including law-violating behaviors, are determined by factors largely beyond individual control. Positivist theories contrast with classical theories, which argue that people generally choose their behaviors in rational processes of logical decision-making, and with critical theories, which critique lawmaking, social stratification, and the unequal distribution of power and wealth. Lombroso's work has long since fallen out of favor. However, biological theories have continued to develop. Rather than measuring physical features of the body, contemporary approaches focus on biochemical conditions, for example linked to poor diet or hormone imbalance, neurophysiological conditions, for example learning disabilities caused by brain damage, genetic inheritance and/or abnormality, intelligence. These attempts to locate the causes of crime within the individual suggest that there are identifiable differences between offenders and non-offenders. In other words, the criminal is other, in some way different or abnormal to everyone else. How do Lombroso and biological positivism explain crime causation? It is based on the following views. Criminals were atavistic, linking physical appearance and crimes, studied prisoners and found that they shared a number of common physical attributes, such as sloping foreheads and receding chins. Crime was a product of biology and biological characteristics. There is born criminals. And Lombroso advocates the positivism. So what is positivism? Positivism is a common scientific tradition which is inspired by the science of the 18th and 19th centuries, the Age of Enlightenment, and attempts to establish empirical explanations of human behavior. On the other hand, as biological explanation to causes of crime progressed, numerous aspects were viewed to be the source of criminal behavior, like physical characteristics, body types, genes and heredity, and many more. The criminal can be distinguished from the non-criminal by numerous physical and psychological anomalies. In this regard, biological theories of crime explains that origin of criminal behavior comes from the following: first, physical trait theories; second, body physique; and third, heredity and evolution. First, physical trait theories. These theories explains that one can determine a person's character, moral disposition, or behavior by observing his or her physical characteristics is ancient. In the next section, physiognomy and phrenology, and prominent names involved in studying physical traits will be presented. First is Franz Joseph Gall. Franz Joseph Gall, German anatomist and physiologist, a pioneer in ascribing cerebral functions to various areas of the brain. Localization, the founder of phrenology. So what is phrenology? Phrenology, the attempt to divine individual intellect and personality from an examination of skull shape. This involves the measurement of bumps on the skull to predict mental traits. It is based on the concept that the brain is the organ of the mind, and that certain brain areas have localized, specific functions or modules. Second is Johann Caspar Lavater and his physiognomy. Johann Caspar Lavater, a Swiss writer, Protestant pastor, founder of physiognomics or the physiognomy. What is physiognomy? Physiognomy is a practice in evaluating the personality or character of a person from its appearance, especially the face. To further understand this concept of physical traits and crime, in the next section, Will explains this concept and to include prominent names in this area of study. Under the physical characteristics, the atavistic stigmata or the physical criminal types is one of the prominent theory in relating crimes to physical characteristics. According to Cesare Lombroso's atavism theory, he argues that criminals are primitive savages who are evolutionarily backward compared to normal citizens. He points out that born criminals possess an array of stigmata or markers that may be considered putative evidence of their criminality. To explain further on the physical criminal types or the physical appearance itself inclined an individual to criminality, let us dig deeper on the physiognomy with important personalities which expound this theory. A. Physiognomy. The term physiognomy comes from the Greek words physis, meaning nature, and nomon, meaning to judge or to interpret. It refers to the evaluation of a person's personality or character, that is, his or her nature, through an examination of that person's outward appearance. Early physiognomy concentrated on characteristics of the face through which to judge the person's nature. Aristotle, a Greek philosopher who lived from 384 to 322 BCE, was a proponent of physiognomy, as were many other ancient Greeks. The practice flourished in many areas of the world and was taught in universities throughout England until it was banned by Henry VIII in 1531. 1. Giambattista della Porta, 1535 to 1615. The publication of On Physiognomy in 1586 by Italian scholar Giambattista della Porta once again brought renewed focus to this belief and practice of the ancient Greeks. Della Porta, often considered the first criminologist, examined patients during his medical practice and concluded that appearance and character were related. He approached the study of this relationship from a magico-spiritualistic metaphysical perspective instead of a scientific one, classifying humans on the basis of their resemblance to animals. For example, men who look like donkeys are similar to donkeys in their laziness and stupid. Men who resemble pigs behave like pigs. The next slides presents what is phrenology, and the personalities who studied and supported phrenology. Phrenology origin and its definition. Phrenology, from the Greek words phren, meaning mind, and logos, meaning knowledge, is based on the belief that human behavior originated in the brain. This was a major departure from earlier beliefs that focused on the four humours as the source of emotions and behaviors. First, sanguine, blood, seated in the liver and associated with courage and love. Second, choleric, yellow bile, seated in the gallbladder and associated with anger and bad temper. Third, melancholic, black bile, seated in the spleen and associated with depression, sadness, and irritability. And, fourth, phlegmatic, phlegm, seated in the brain and lungs and associated with calmness and lack of excitability. Theoretically and practically relocating responsibility for behavior from various organs to the brain represented a major step in the development of the scientific study of behavior and in the development of biological explanations of crime and criminality. First, Franz Joseph Gall, 1758 to 1828. The practice of cranioscopy evolved around 1800 by Franz Joseph Gall, a German neuroanatomist and physiologist who pioneered the study of the human brain as the wellspring of mental capacities. Cranium. Gall claims that a person's strengths, weaknesses, morals, proclivities, character, and personality can be determined by their skull. Gall's work had a profound impact aimed to establish the brain as the basis of behavior. While cranioscopy aimed to match external physical qualities to interior physical characteristics, that is, brain structure, it was a substantial advance over physiognomy. Second, Johann Spurzheim, 1776–1832, Spurzheim, a German physician and student of Gall's, actually coined the term phrenology to replace cranioscopy. Spurzheim also expanded the map of the brain organs, developed a hierarchical system of the organs, and created a model phrenology bust that depicted the location of the brain organs. While the German scientists were focusing attention on the brain as an important determinant of individual behavior, various other scholars were theorizing about the development of man as a biological organism, about the nature of social and political organizations, and about the place of man, as an individual, within those organizations. The synthesis of these ideas would significantly advance the progress of research related to biological perspectives of behavior. Third, Charles Goring disagreed with Lombroso on the atavism. He concluded that no distinct physical abnormalities differentiating criminals from non-criminals. Goring's crowning achievement was the English Convict, a statistical study, one of the most comprehensive criminological works of its time. It was first published in 1913, and set out to establish whether there were any significant physical or mental abnormalities among the criminal classes that set them apart from ordinary men, as suggested by Cesare Lombroso. Under the sponsorship of the British government, Goring, assisted by other prison medical officers, as well as Carl Pearson and his staff at the Biometrics Laboratory, collected and analyzed data bearing upon 96 traits of each of over 3,000 English convicts. He ultimately concluded that the physical and mental constitution of both criminal and law-abiding persons, of the same age, stature, class, and intelligence, are identical. There is no such thing as an anthropological criminal type. He did, however, assert that it is an indisputable fact that there is a physical, mental, and moral type of normal person who tends to be convicted of crime. That is to say, our evidence conclusively shows that, on average, the criminal of English prisons is markedly differentiated by defective physique, as measured by stature and body weight, by defective mental capacity. Goring went on to argue that one of the three measures in which to combat crime was to regulate the reproduction of those degrees of constitutional qualities: feeble-minded, inebriety, epilepsy, social instinct, etc. In the next section, body physique and crime and personalities involved in explaining crime through body shapes will also be presented. See body physique and crime. First, Ernest Kretschmer, originated from him the idea of somatotyping. Kretschmer is also known for developing a classification system that can be seen as one of the earliest exponents of a constitutional, the total plan or philosophy on which something is constructed, approach. His classification system was based on three main body types: asthenic, leptosomic, thin, small, weak, athletic, muscular, large-boned, and pynic, stocky, fat. The athletic category was later combined into the category asthenic/leptosomic. Each of these body types was associated with certain personality traits and, in a more extreme form, psychopathologies. Kretschmer believed that pynic persons were friendly, interpersonally dependent, and gregarious. In a more extreme version of these traits, this would mean, for example, that the obese are predisposed toward manic-depressive illness. Thin types were associated with introversion and timidity. This was seen as a milder form of the negative symptoms exhibited by withdrawn schizophrenics. However, the idea of the association of body types with personality traits is no longer influential in personality theory. Second, William H. Sheldon is an influenced of the somatotype school of criminology, which related body built to behavior. Morin, 2014. Proponent of somatotyping theory, running contrary to prevailing sociological emphases on the environmental correlates of crime, Sheldon chose to instead employ beliefs about Darwin's survival of the fittest, Lombroso's criminal man, and Galton's eugenics. Sheldon argued for an ideal type, in which perfectly formed physique joined perfectly formed temperament and disposition. Any combination that deviated from this ideal was associated with disorders of both personality and behavior. He claimed a physical basis for all variations in personality and body build. During the 1940s, Sheldon developed and tested his classification system, known as somatotyping. He created 3 classifications: 1. Ectomorphs, who were thin, delicate, flat, and linear. 2. Endomorphs, who were heavy or obese, with a round, soft shape. And 3. Mesomorphs, who were rectangular, muscular, and sturdy. For the next section, heredity will be discussed. Heredity and evolution. As the search for explanations of individual and social behavior improved through the application of statistical methods and the positivist insistence that the only real knowledge was that obtained through systematic observation, that is, the scientific method, beliefs about the nature and potential of man within society became more sophisticated and grounded. Although Lamarck had earlier discussed the passage of certain acquired traits from generation to generation, soft inheritance, theorists in the mid-1800s benefited from Malthus's propositions about the progress of society and from increasingly sophisticated inquiries into the nature and source of biological and behavioral predispositions. First, Herbert Spencer, 1820–1903, an early English social theorist and philosopher. Spencer articulated a theory of evolution in progress, its law and cause, 1857, prior to the publication of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species in 1859. Spencer proposed that everything in the universe developed from a single source and progressed in complexity with the passing of time and generations, becoming differentiated yet being characterized by increasing integration of the differentiated parts. Spencer also coined the phrase, survival of the fittest, in 1864, after reading Darwin's On the Origin of Species, and he applied the idea of natural selection to society. Second, Charles Darwin, 1809–1882. Although the preceding paragraphs illustrate the development of scientific thought on the concepts of heredity and evolution, most scholars primarily note the impact of Charles Darwin. Darwin described his theories in 2 main publications: 1. On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life, 1859, and 2. The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex, 1871. In On the Origin of Species, Darwin detailed the theory that organisms evolve over generations through a process of natural selection. Darwin reached his conclusions and supported his observations through evidence that he collected during a sea voyage on a boat, the HMS Beagle, during the 1830s. The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex applied Darwin's theory to human evolution and described the theory of sexual selection. Although he had earlier hinted that natural selection and evolution could and should be applied to the development of man, others, Thomas Huxley in 1863, Alfred Wallace in 1864, had actually applied his theories to the human animal first. In the next slide will be about Cesare Lombroso. Cesare Lombroso, 1835–1909, among the first to apply Darwin's findings to criminal behavior and criminals. Lombroso was an Italian criminologist and founder of the Italian school of positivist criminology. Lombroso rejected the established classical school, which held that crime was a characteristic trait of human nature. Instead, using concepts drawn from earlier perspectives, such as physiognomy, Lombroso argued, in essence, that criminality was inherited and that someone is a born criminal could be identified by physical defects, which confirmed a criminal as savage, or atavistic. Lombroso published Criminal Man in 1876, helping to establish the newly forming positive school of criminology. Inspired by Charles Darwin's evolutionary theory, He believed that criminals were not as evolved as people who did not commit crime, and that crime is a result of biological differences between criminals and non-criminals. A central focus of Lombroso's work is the concept of atavism. Atavism describes the reappearance in an organism of characteristics of some remote ancestor after several generations of absence. It often refers to one that exhibits atavism, that is, a throwback. It can also mean a reversion to an earlier behavior, outlook, or approach. Lombroso approached this concept believing that criminals were throwbacks on the evolutionary scale. He believed that modern criminals shared physical characteristics, stigmata, with primitive humans. In his later years, he eventually thought that social and environmental factors can contribute to criminality. And lastly, in the next slide will be about genetic influence and crime. Genes or eugenics. Eugenics is the practice or advocacy of improving the human species by selectively mating people with specific desirable hereditary traits. Also, it focuses on hereditary mental capacity. Henry H. Goddard and the Kallikak family. Goddard concluded that different mental characteristics are inherited and that society would prevent the reproduction of those who have these characteristics. Kallikak family, heredity of feeble-mindedness. In a separate video, the overview of the story about Kallikak family will be covered. Just visit my channel and view the Kallikak family lineage. The next person is Richard L. Dugdale. He published a book titled The Dukes, A Study in Crime, Pauperism, Disease, and Heredity. He studies the Duke family, pseudonym, and found that 29 male with immediate blood relations had been imprisoned. Ada Duke, mother of criminals. A separate video also presents the story of the mother of criminals in my channel. And lastly, is the chromosomal abnormality. XI chromosomal abnormality. This supermale syndrome. XI syndrome is a genetic condition that occurs when a male has an additional copy of the Y chromosome in every cell. XI. Often, only specific cells have this mutation. The extra Y chromosome in people with XI syndrome is 47 chromosomes. Chromosome is the thread-like part of the cell that carries hereditary information in the form of genes. The normal pair of chromosomes is 23 pairs to 46 chromosomes. Women have 2 X chromosomes, 20. Men usually have an X and Y chromosomes, XY. XYY syndrome is a genetic condition in which a male has an extra Y chromosome. There are usually few symptoms. These may include being taller than average, acne, and an increased risk of learning problems. The person is generally otherwise typical, including typical rates of fertility. The condition is generally not inherited from a person's parents but rather occurs as a result of a random event during sperm development. Diagnosis is by a chromosomal analysis, but most of those affected are not diagnosed within their lifetime. There are 47 chromosomes, instead of the usual 46, giving a 47 XI karyotype. Treatment may include speech therapy or extra help with schoolwork, but outcomes are generally good. The condition occurs in about 1 in 1,000 male births. Many people with the condition are unaware that they have it. The condition was first described in 1961. A common form of an aneuploidy is trisomy, or the presence of an extra chromosome in cells. Tri is Greek for 3. People with trisomy have 3 copies of a particular chromosome in cells instead of the normal 2 copies. Down syndrome, also known as trisomy 21, is an example of a condition caused by trisomy. People with Down syndrome typically have 3 copies of chromosome 21 in each cell, for a total of 47 chromosomes per cell. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.